Hockey Inside Out, presented to you by the Montreal Gazette.
Welcome to the Hockey Inside Out Show. I'm Montreal Gazette sports editor Stu Cowan, joined by Chris Nilan, Jack Todd, and Jessica Rusnak of TSN Radio 690. Chris, your old buddy Red Fisher used to have a line, "Show me the players." I'm wondering if this Tampa Bay series against Montreal, Canadiens down 2-0, is it a simple case of the Canadiens don't have the players to compete with Tampa Bay?
Well, I don't know. They had the players to compete in this league, the National Hockey League, all year. They had an awesome record. We can say Carey Price did this and he did that and he held them in all year. We got that. We know they had a problem scoring goals all year. I don't know if it's a question they don't have the players. Could they use more scoring? Of course they would, but the opportunities, some of the opportunities they get, they're not taking advantage of. I mean, you hit the post, you hit the post. It's not hitting the net. They had some glorious opportunities in the first game. That game could have been, they could have been up 3-0 at one point in that game if they buried their chances. They're just not putting the puck in the net, one of the things. And the depth of Tampa Bay and the goaltending obviously has proved to be too much for this team all year, and it hasn't gotten better in the playoffs.
You see any way of them coming back from a 2-0 deficit?
I think it's going to be tough. I covered the 2004 series down there, and this feels a lot kind of the same, although in that case the first two games were in Tampa. But with those two games, you know, with Martin St. Louis and Cavalier and Brad Richards, the Canadiens were just outclassed, and that's what this really feels like. I think they might steal a game there, but I don't see them doing more than that.
Sweep possibility, Jess?
I don't think there'll be a sweep, but I think I agree with Jack that they might be able to squeak one away. I have a feeling that this series will be done Saturday here in Montreal, unfortunately. But as you mentioned that, I think they do have the players that can keep up with Tampa Bay, but they're just not delivering right now. And a lot of times they talked about, yeah, we're not scoring goals, but we're getting opportunities, so that's a good sign. But when you're in the playoffs, you don't have that time. That if you aren't turning those opportunities into goals, then they really don't mean anything.
There's no finish. To me, that's the biggest thing. And what you need there, to me, Bergeron's number one priority in the offseason is go out and get a counterbalance to Max Pacioretty. You need two guys who can do what Max does and put the puck in the net. And right now they have one, and it's killing them.
And this power play has just become
well,
a joke.
for sure. Opportunities, you got to capitalize on them. You don't, so what? They were opportunities. 1. 2, the power play. Abysmal power play. I've heard the coach talk about momentum. We got momentum on it. Momentum, you got to score on it once in a while. Listen, I don't expect them to be perfect, but they're not even sometimes they generate some chances, but they have to score on it, and they're not. Momentum's not enough.
And he did mention too that, you know, a lot of times on the power play, if the puck was a little, like, few inches closer, it would have been into the net, and then this would be a completely different story. They would have 3 or 4 goals on the power play. But this is reality. That's not what happened. So as much as you're saying, you know, what could have happened or what should have happened, but you got to live in the now, and the power play's not producing.
I think the two goals they got Sunday showed something. They both came from way out of the point, Petrie and Gilbert. And, you know, they're getting in the wrist shots. They're not the PK big wind-up slapper. It looks to me like Bishop's a little vulnerable out there. Also, he doesn't know where the hell the puck is if it's on a rebound. You always see him like this. Yeah. He's looking around trying to see where it is. I mean, you're going to be like Brian Flynn, who had a shot right after Petrie's and hit him right in the bread basket. The guy's 11'4" and 400 pounds. So you're not going to beat him that way. But I would like to see more of that. I'd like to see a lot more of Petrie on the power play, especially.
He seems to, he looks before he shoots, right? Not like PK just sort of winding up Petrie. He seems to pick a spot and fire it through.
Yes, and you know, the whole thing with him, it was a quick shot. I think he's looking more past the defenders. He's trying to look for that lane to shoot in. It's difficult when you're out there in the point. You don't have a lot of time. And regardless of the guys setting up down low and they coming back out and getting in the shooting lane, the last thing a guy wants to do is hit someone in the pads and off on a breakaway. So the wrist shot is key, and you know, you don't need the big bullet every time from the point, and Petrie was proof of that.
Now, Jack, if or when the Canadiens are eliminated, the heat's obviously going to come on Michel Therrien. This guy got 110 points in the regular season without a guy in the top 20 scoring. Is it a case of playing the cards you're dealt?
Yeah, I think it is to a degree. Like I said, I think they need at least one more big league sniper. And he doesn't have that, so, you know, he's going to get crucified if they get swept in this series. All the people have been shrieking all year that, you know, the dump and chase, the fact he can't coach the power play, all these things. I don't expect anything to happen. but there will be heat from the public.
Do you see any chance of him losing his job if they go out, you think?
I don't think this offseason, but it'll be the first, tick on the list of things that will add up that eventually leads to someone getting fired. And if they don't have a good start to the season, next season, I think then things are going to be a lot more heated around Montreal compared to, say, if they went again to the conference final, or if they played a really good second round against Tampa Bay and ended up losing in a Game 7. But I think this will be the first thing that you would write down on the notepad that will eventually maybe lead to his downfall.
Now, Michel Therrien seems to be a calmer guy behind the bench, Chris. In the room, maybe he's still a bit of a hard-ass type thing. Do you think that his style might wear off, like the players might tune him out at one point?
Yeah, it could, very well could. All coaches have that shelf life, but if you're not a good communicator, I don't know, I've only seen him on 24CH. I've heard some things about him, some of the things he says to players, which I don't care for, I could only imagine sitting there and having him rip into me, for confrontation. But again, listen, players deserve to get put in their place at times. I think today's player you have to communicate so much better with them and work with them. And you know what? You're trying to get the most out of guys. I think it works better to be positive, be able to show someone what they're doing wrong if you have to show them on the tape, and then show them when they're doing it right. And expect that. Say, here's the deal. And try and get guys to be honest with themselves about their game and get the most out of them. And I think, and again, I can't speak because I'm not in there, but some of the things I heard, I haven't liked what I've heard. And again, hopefully he's changed some of that. But again, I go to 24CH the time he said to PK, you think you're playing good? You think you're playing good? Like, it's like, okay, but it's almost like he was showing him up there, like instead of like being a coach and sitting down and saying, hey, here's the deal. And you know what? Two coaches, they only give a guy so much rope, and after a while, maybe he's told PK 20 times that, he wanted to play a certain way and he's not doing it, and that was the end of his rope. But who knows?
We'll be right back after a short break, and we'll talk a bit about Brandon Prust's comments about the refereeing in the NHL. Welcome back. Brandon Prust making headlines with his comments about the referee Watson. Jack and Jessica, you guys were in the scrum. What was your reaction when you heard Brandon's comments?
I was at the back, and I kind of got it in fragments. I got the mother bleeper part and some of the other stuff, and I thought, wow, this is pretty heavy. And then the next day when I read the comments over, it was obviously it was going to cause a storm. The whole thing, I think, has been really intriguing, and the revealing part has been how much almost all the media, the party line everywhere as well, he screwed up because now the refs are going to come down on him hard. And sometimes the most revealing thing is what you say that you don't think needs explanation. Because the assumption behind this is that National Hockey League refs are biased, that they will act in coercion to browbeat Brandon Prust for what he said. And finally, that the guy that quarterbacked the whole whitewash investigation, his son plays for the Canadiens' greatest rival, the Boston Bruins, and he's demonstrated before that he has zero integrity and zero objectivity. And this entire ugly National Hockey League story, like the initial column I wrote, was that Prust touched off a contagion of idiocy in the team, which is true. Subban took a dumb penalty, Yemelin took a couple that went right down the lineup, but they're missing the story, which was, I noticed the biggest thing about Prust's apology, he did not say he didn't say it.
Well, that's a lot of times, I don't like the argument that they're saying, what was said on the ice stays on the ice. If something wrong is said on the ice, then it should be made public, and it should be something that's addressed to fix the game so it's refereed in the best, most subjective way possible. Yeah. That I don't think it's necessarily fair that now because Prust said something that, we don't know at the end of the day if it's true or not, but that there's no way to prove otherwise at the moment, that they didn't release a tape and said, look, this is what it is, that I think, you should as a player have the right to say something was done to me that was not correct, and people should know about it.
What was your reaction? Chris, you've been there post-game, the heat, the emotion.
Yeah, everybody knows what they would do, right, in that situation. Everybody knows what they do in the situation with Braden Coburn, what happened there after Prust took the stick between the legs pretty hard. and he decides to do something about it. And I know you're supposed to be disciplined. It's the playoffs. And I don't like what Coben did either, and didn't accept the invitation. To me, a big, rough, tough former Philadelphia Flyer puts his tail between his legs. To me, that was brutal what he did. He should have accepted the invitation and went with him. 1. 2, what Brandon Press said after the game, I don't agree with. I wouldn't have said it. I think he, looking back, probably wishes he didn't say it and make it public. But again, I understand what's going on here. The frustration, your adrenaline's going. He said his heart was pumping out of his chest. When you're in those shoes, you don't always make the best decisions. And I'll go further by saying the job he has and the job he's done here, showing the courage, the sacrifice for his teammates since he's been here. The only guy who's done it. Sometimes you have to take the good with the bad, and a guy like that's going to make some mistakes. And they killed it off.
You know what bothers me is in a playoff game, especially with a guy like Prest, he's an emotional guy, everything. The referees are supposed to be cool-headed.
Oh, yeah.
Objective.
Was very unprofessional what he did.
Pointing the finger at him.
The referee acted like he had a playoff game on the line. I'm sorry, butthead, but you know, you're out there to keep this stuff calm, not to throw oil on the fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is this a time when you think the Canadiens need a captain?
I think it would help, especially the two veteran assistant captains that they have now with Andrei Markov and Thomas Plekanec. That they're two guys that are very respected on the team. They lead by example, but I don't think they're the kind of guys that are in the room that will give those big speeches that you kind of need in a time like this. And I think, you know, Max Pacioretty and PK Subban are doing a good job, but they're part of that group of the young veterans that they're still learning how to grow into that leadership role. That I think it would be helpful if you look back at last year, a guy like Brian Gionta, who's won the Cup, who's been in a lot of situations, to kind of get everyone riled up and let them all realize that the series is not done, their season's not done, that they're able to come back. That I do agree with you that a captain in a situation like this would probably come in handy.
You had Bob Gainey.
As a Press might be the best one.
you had Bob Gainey as your captain. How do you think Bob would have handled this situation with what happened with Preston going into the Game 3?
I don't know if a game like Game 2 afterwards, I think, would have been addressed by everybody for sure. I think Bob would have tried to calm everything down and make guys realize that, you know, it's not as bad as we think it is. Let's get refocused and do what we have to do. We blew that one. We gave him that game. He'd be calm about it, Bob. And he was never a yelling guy, and he led by example, and when he spoke, everybody listened, and it wasn't often he had to speak. And do the Canadiens need a captain at this point? I'm sure the people who speak up are speaking up in there, regardless if the guy has a C in his chest or not. Would it be good at this point? They went without it all year, and it seemed to work pretty well. They're going to have to get through this rough patch. This is a growing experience for this team, and I said it before the season, I thought they were going to take a step back this year before they really move forward and become a team that's competitive every year in the playoffs, that's making the playoffs and able to, like a Chicago type of team, that you know they're in, they're going to play, they're a playoff team. That team, you know they have the experience. Look what they're doing in the playoffs. And I really, truly believe the team has to learn, and they have to go through things like they're going through right now to grow.
That's it for this week's Hockey Inside Out show. We'll be back next week, and we'll see if the Canadiens are still playing.